Marriage is definitely not easy, but second or third marriages are absolutely tough. So we're going to go into why that might be. I'm going to give you some statistics, and I want to also preface with there might be some triggers here because I'm going to give you some case studies of something that you might have been through. So just prepare yourself that this might be a little dicey, but I'm going to give you some solutions at the end. I'm Michelle Pava. You're listening to the Finance Therapist Podcast. If you visit my site, thefinancetherapist.com, you will see lots of free resources, including a 1-year free program called Flex. So that is for you if you are suffering from financial anxiety, stress surrounding money. That is for you. So let's talk about money and second marriages. Now, before we begin, I want to give you some statistics, and these are not to depress you. These are sobering, but I want you to be aware that, number one, you're not alone in your struggle. And again, I'm going to be giving you some solutions later, okay? So just hear me out on this and brace yourself. Number one, second marriages have a higher rate of divorce. Of course, a lot of you already know that. And it is estimated that around 60% of second marriages end in divorce. The duration of the marriage is also about 8 years before ending in divorce. So it doesn't even hit that 10-year mark. Remarriage rates. So despite the higher likelihood of divorce, remarriage rates are actually pretty significant. About 40% of marriages in the United States are remarriages for at least one spouse. And what are some of these contributing factors? Well, obviously, finance is number one, but also blended family dynamics, unresolved issues from previous relationships, and also just differing expectations. A lot of times, second marriages don't take any kind of couple counseling or any kind of religious counseling. They feel like, been there, done that. It didn't work the first time, so I'm just going to jump in. So they also are going into the situation often without any guidance at all. And also there's a different age range, of course. So data shows that individuals tend to remarry, obviously, at older ages in their second marriage. This means that for men, it's around age 40. For women, it's around age 37, which also means that you're coming to the table with a lot of habits that are hard to shake. So there's another aspect that is both a blessing and also a challenge, and that is children in second marriages. Second marriages often involve children from previous relationships, which can add to the complexity of family dynamics. About 40% of remarriages have children from both partners, so that's a high percentage. And then also, like I said, financial considerations are the number one thing. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And financial considerations are significant. And about 50% of remarried couples report financial issues as a major source of their conflict in their relationship. So these are just broad statistics, and also these are different challenges, and these are not the only challenges that second marriages face, or any marriage faces for that matter, but also it's important to recognize that individual experiences can vary greatly, and successful remarriages are possible and do happen with effective communication, mutual respect, and a willingness to address the underlying issues and have those uncomfortable conversations. So let's dive in. So I am in a second marriage, and I can tell you that in the beginning, it felt a little bit like, for both of us probably, that we were sort of dealing with a Charles Dickens book, that we're in the present moment, but the ghosts of the past would visit us in our interactions and in our projections and things like that. So it is definitely a struggle. Now, I am over 25 years remarried, so I can safely say that I think we have it all ironed out. But I want you to know that it can be really tough. So one of the things that happens is the shadows of the past merge with the promise of the future. So the ghosts of these financial woes often rear their heads, threatening to cast a negativity over your newfound happiness. And it can be very sobering to be in this new relationship where, in your first marriage or your first relationship, everything was just, unicorns and rainbows, right? For many people. And then we learn that marriages break. We go into marriages hoping that it's going to last forever. And it is just really hard for many people to realize that things happen, and things that can happen are very painful sometimes. It's often not just two people who, mutually say, you know what, this isn't working out, shake hands and call it a day. It's usually a little messy. So I want you to understand that some of the examples that I give you could really hit home for you. And I'm going to try to make them as non-emotional as possible. And I have changed the names and some of the details so that no one is exposed in these case studies. But let's explore first the delicate balance of dealing with a friendly ex, okay? Dealing with a friendly ex. So I want you to just hear me out here. There was this couple, let's just call them Sarah and John. And Sarah's relationship with her ex-husband was actually positive. Her ex-husband was Tom, and it was very positive. But it also was hiding this simmering cauldron of emotions because John's support was steadfast. I mean, he was definitely there as a support and being as friendly and civil as possible. And he really didn't have anything against Tom, her ex. He really didn't have any problem with Tom. And they all had a fairly good relationship. But John's support was overshadowed by his feelings of inadequacy as he grappled with the weight of Tom's financial requests, all the while trying to provide for their blended family. So what was happening is Tom was not as affluent, and Tom would ask for money or ask for, hey, can you pay half of this, or can you do this or that? And Sarah had a good relationship with him, and she would always think, well, this is for the kids. This is for the kids. And she would have no problem. And that's good to feel that way. But what she wasn't thinking about was, how does John really feel about this? Once in a while, it's okay, but does this sometimes weigh on John? Does it feel like a marriage of three, not a marriage of two? So that is one of the different dynamics that, we can talk about later on, but just think about that. Do you have someone who is a friendly ex, whether it's someone you're dealing with or that your partner's dealing with, or both of you are on good terms with your exes? Or are you the person who may be asking for this and that and maybe putting undue stress on your partner, your ex-partner, I should say? And so the reason why this is important, especially if you're the one asking for help and you may be thinking, I don't really care about their relationship. I don't care about it. Well, do you care about it if it causes stress in their relationship and your child is then exposed to them arguing? And do you want to just do anything in your power to make life peaceful for your child? So if you can take a step back and think about that, that's important. So let's dive into another one. So this is coping with the high conflict ex. This is the zero friendliness, okay? So Lisa and Michael had a journey that is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Their love was tested by fiery trials of legal battles and bitter disputes over child support and taking, firm stands against rage and manipulation and narcissism and all the things. So when you have a couple and you are in your second marriage, or maybe it's your third marriage, and your ex is very high conflict, or their ex is very high conflict, that really wears on the relationship because, number one, this high conflict ex probably is high conflict across the board, and that is probably partially what contributed to the breakup to begin with the original marriage. But now you're in the second marriage and you're trying to make it work, and you already have a lot going against you. And then you have Crazy Town, who is wreaking their havoc, right? And so that can be overshadowing the love and support and the peacefulness that you truly have in your second marriage or in your home. So one very important thing to think about here is being able to have times where you don't speak about that ex. You never speak about that ex, if you can, in front of any of the children, because even if it's not, their parent, maybe you have children together with your new partner, or you have children from other relationships. You don't want any of the children to be exposed to any of the crazy. You have to be able to keep your mood and your emotions intact. You don't want to be reactive. And I know it's really hard, especially if you're dealing with someone who is very narcissistic, but you need to keep that space. Now, all of this is going to be going into finance, because these are all different emotional, feeling-based and action-based reactions and situations that are and can and often do affect your finances. Because when you're stressed, your go-to might be just grabbing pizza or going out to eat or buying something expensive or arguing with your partner over money, because you don't want to actually say what the real issue is because you're sick of hearing about it. So you don't want to keep bringing up your ex. So you might start nitpicking with other areas, and other areas may actually become very like scapegoat situations. So another situation is blended families. Now, this is very common. Like I said, 40% of remarriages each have a child. So 40% of remarriages have children from another relationship. So these unfold like a tapestry woven from the threads of love. And that's great. Our couple, David and Emily, names have been changed, were bound by that love. That love knew no bounds, and yet they grappled with the complexities of merging their families and their finances. So what was happening is they have this large blended family, and through different situations and different times in their relationship, sometimes an ex was great financially and supportive, and sometimes not. Sometimes and this is going to go into the next thing that I talk about with parenting styles, but blended families are tough because you come into the family with not only each other, but the grandparents. So one set of grandparents may do a certain type of ritual or pattern with the family, and another set of grandparents does something completely different. But remember, each of these children probably have another set of grandparents. So it's hard to integrate all of the family, and blended families can be very challenging financially as well as emotionally. And a lot of times, step parenting can be extremely hard. It's very rocky. There needs to be a lot of boundaries. And here's the deal. In a relationship, love, the feeling of love, comes and goes. And it's great to go into a relationship and think you're going to be like the Brady Bunch and all conflicts are going to be done in 28 minutes and they're always going to be positive. But that's just not reality. So it's important to understand, especially if you were a product of a remarriage and you had to deal with all that goes into remarriages, you may yourself be feeling some of the baggage coming up again in your own current relationship. It's very important to make sure that you have some kind of therapy for blended families. So I talked about parenting styles, which kind of goes with the blended family piece. I'm going to use Mark and Jessica. They were really an incredible couple. They were very opposite. So before, when I talked about Dave and Emily, and when I was saying like they were bound by love and it knew no bounds and all of that and the tapestry, Dave and Emily were very similar. They had very similar backgrounds, similar religion. They just had a lot in common. And so even as their relationship progressed, it wasn't just one or two things that they liked to do together, but as their relationship progressed, they were very comfortable in where they were. Now, with Mark and Jessica, they were a little different. Great couple. They had many positives, but they were just a symphony of contrast, okay? They were harmonious, but they were a harmonious blend of opposites, and you might be able to relate to that. So Mark was more about planning and charting finances and meticulous. He was someone who liked things orderly in the home. He was very organized, but he could also get really frustrated. Jessica was sort of this free spirit, and she really didn't plan a whole lot. She had income, but she, wasn't, she kind of decided when she was going to share it and when she wasn't. So they were a couple that were very opposite, and they didn't really have a whole lot in common, but they were good in a way that they, how do I describe it? They really kind of bounced off each other. They balanced each other out. So Mark sort of needed a little bit of laid back fun, and Jessica needed a little structure. So they were a really good couple. But together, they had to understand that it wasn't just about love. It wasn't just about a couple of the things that they love to do together, like go to football games and, things like that. They had to learn that compromise was a daily activity, and they had to do that in a way that was extremely, they had to do it in a way that was always compassionate, because it's easy when you're opposites to not have as much compassion. It's easier when you have so much in common and you're like best friends and you feel like you relate together very well. But when you're opposites, there could be a lot of resentment that builds up. So they had to work really hard at compassion as well as compromise. And then that had to parlay into their children as well. And again, when you're opposite like that, you usually have very opposite ways of spending, and that can be very frustrating. So now I want to talk about some previous relationship norms. So we all have this, even if we dated before. And this is going to go into the next one, because I'm going to talk about childhood financial norms. So in previous relationship norms, that is about the scars of the past, the past wounds and the hope of future healing. You probably still have some scars from your first marriage or from that last relationship. So I want to tell you about Tom and Rachel. They were really a testament to resilience. They had a lot of pain in their previous relationships, and they were pretty open about that. A lot of times, couples try to pretend that their last relationship is just completely done. They don't care about it. And if that's the case, that's actually a red flag, because that means that they might be able to just disassociate at a drop of a pin. So with Tom and Rachel, they weren't like that. They were very open about the pain that they had in the past, and they found a lot of comfort with each other. Now, with Tom and Rachel, one of them had a spouse pass. So it wasn't two people that got divorced. It was one that had a partner pass away, which was very sad, and one that was in a long-term cohabitating relationship. So one was not married, one was married, and their partner passed. But the one that was not married was in a very long-term, over 7-year relationship, and they lived together. So, excuse me, my ring just hit the desk. So, anyway, because I talk with my hands, I talk with my hands even when I'm alone. So, anyway, I just want you to know that it's not uncommon to still have feelings about your ex. It's not uncommon, even if you had a spouse pass away, to remember some of the pain that you went through and endured in that relationship. And it's not also uncommon to feel sadness over the joy and everything that you miss in that relationship. So with Tom and Rachel, this was a journey that was marked by courage, compassion, and really unwavering love. They navigated these murky waters of not only emotional but financial discord, and they learned that love is meaningful, but also forgiveness is an anchor that holds them steady. So they actually really worked at helping each other to forgive and move forward without forgetting. They didn't insist basically that they had to move on in such a way that was very stoic and, I'm your new partner and the past doesn't matter anymore. So they were able to do that. And because they were able to do that, because they were able to have these conversations, and this was a really fun couple to work with because they were so open and they had so much respect for each other. And because they were able to have these conversations, they were also able to have financial conversations. And financial conversations end up being extremely intimate. So lastly, and there's more that I want to talk about, but I'm going to give you the last case study, is the childhood financial norms. And this one we all have. We're all bringing in our childhood to our first marriage, our second marriage, our friendships, our parenting, our work, everything. We're bringing our past. So I want to talk about Alex specifically, and I'm not going to mention his partner. But Alex had a childhood that was impacted by, it was plagued. It wasn't impacted. It was plagued by financial insecurity. And that made him very frugal. And it was that frugality was both a shield and a prison. So it was shielding him from being in poverty, but it was a prison because he was always reminded of fear and uncertainty and his youth that was very painful. So as he's working through his healing, his partner needs to understand that sometimes relationship problems are not about the relationship. Sometimes they're about moving through what you need to move through. That said, there's never a relationship that is only about one person. So while Alex was moving through what he needed to move through, he actually is in that second marriage because the other person is, and I'm not using, I've changed his name and I'm not using her name. I'm not using a fake name because this is a little too fresh. But this other person, his partner, really needs to work on why they were attracted to someone who was going through so much and having so much pain. So in every relationship, even if you're with someone who is very self-centered, you have to look at, you had to be pretty enabling and pretty giving during the dating or the early part of your relationship because there's something in you that was in some way okay with that person being self-centered. So you always have to look at not only what is this person bringing to the table and how great is this person in the beginning, but you have to, in the beginning, think, am I settling for some of these behaviors? Am I trying to turn a blind eye? Am I trying to look with rose-colored glasses? Am I just trying to see the silver linings and avoid the clouds? And sometimes we just have to look at reality, and sometimes reality lets us down and our heart sinks and we realize maybe this person isn't right for us. So now that was all a little gloomy, right? Not all of it actually, but you see where the couples have very distinct situations that they have to work on. So here's some of the labyrinth of solutions. I brought labyrinth up in another podcast, but I love the visual of that. So a labyrinth is a big circle that's a maze and you can actually walk through it. So I want you to imagine that you're really walking through this guided by the twin beacons of financial wisdom and also evolutionary psychology, because that is something that is really important to me when I am working with people in financial therapy. So number one is open communication. And I'm actually looking at my notes right now. So open communication, the cornerstone of any healthy relationship is open and honest communication. Take the time to sit down with your partner, share your fears and concerns, and work together to find solutions that honor both of your needs and desires. That's important. And a lot of people don't actually do that. They think they're communicating because they're talking, because they're speaking. But It's not even just about listening. It's about processing and giving feedback, and also being able to give feedback in a way that you are showing the other person that they are heard and they are valued, and that you are able to receive and hear without judgment and without shutting down. That's very important in open communication. Financial planning, obviously, with financial literacy, you need to have a roadmap. You need to have a blueprint that reflects your goals and your values. And sometimes your values change through life, and you need to continue to have these conversations. It can be really choppy, especially in a second marriage, because finances are a little bit more murky, but you need to have that confidence and clarity, and you need to be a united front together in that second marriage. So having financial planning is very important with that as well. And you have to keep in consideration your children. So another area is compromise and flexibility. So recognize that compromise is essential in any relationship when it comes to finances. And you have to be willing to meet halfway. And you can't be in a relationship where you say, well, I'm good with money and they're not. No, you both have to be good with money. You both have to have responsibility and accountability, because the minute one of you assumes that you're better than the other person at that, it's going to continue to be in this very unequal space. And then you're going to resent that they use the scapegoat of, well, I'm not good with money. You know that. It's your job to do all that. So you need to have equality, and that means you have to have compromise and flexibility. And also, I brought up evolutionary psychology, which is so important to me. You need to understand that the roots of financial behavior really come from our ancestors, and it's our ancestors who want to survive, and they created strategies, and sometimes we still have some of those strategies, but they don't make sense. So we have some primal instincts, and you can better understand your partner's financial mindset if you look more at what is primal to them, what is happening to them that is motivating them. So are they worried about having a roof over their head? Are they focusing on food? Are they focusing on living big? And sometimes living big, it could be seen as narcissistic or being a big shot, right? But sometimes it's because they don't feel like they belong, or they don't feel like they're worthy. So they feel like having the fancy car, the fancy house, and, footing the bill for things. They feel like that makes them not only loved, but also included. They want to be a part of the tribe. That's very evolutionary psychology based. It's very primal. So sometimes it is just completely out there and irresponsible. But if you know the motivations, it's easier to address it in, again, that open, safe communication. And then also just financial literacy. That's the last thing that I have here is, you need to invest in your financial literacy. You probably know less than you think. You're probably overestimating what you think you know, and you need to empower yourself with knowledge. You need to read books and attend workshops and, connect with financial therapy on different levels, and also financial education. And like I said earlier, I have a program that's a 1-year program. There's a 3-week and this is free. The whole thing is free. I have a 3-week intensive, and you go through that intensive, and you do that at your own pace. But then every single week, you're going to have some inspiration or some literacy education, something that's going to help you tap into your personal financial space. So you and your partner can each do this, or you can do it as a couple, however you want to do it. But my program is called Flex, and it is free. And it helps you to find that X factor, which is really important, I think, for especially a second marriage or any couple, really, because the X factor is that thing that is unique for you. And that's the X in Flex. So you want to be empowered by that X factor. And that X factor is, what is your purpose and your passion? What motivates you? What do you really want out of life, and how are you going to get it? And what makes you special to be able to attain it? So that's something else that we work with, because what works for one person is sometimes not going to work for another. And that's why sometimes these very strict programs that are about budgeting or whatever, they tend to be like a little bit like crash dieting, and crash dieting often doesn't work. So yeah, you can be in complete sacrifice and lose weight, and you can be in complete sacrifice and not spend. But how long is that really going to last before you relapse or before you feel like a failure because it's not working out the way you want it to? Where having that X factor is something that we touch on a lot, which will help you figure out what's going to work best for you. And during the year, with every single email, I help you to get more and more clear on it. But after that first 3-week intensive, you're going to have a pretty good idea. And then the rest is going to keep you on the right path. So anyway, in closing, second marriages are tough and they have challenges, but they also offer the promise of healing and growth and love and renewal. And there's complexities in it. I get it, but you can embrace those complexities. And your complexities with love, whether it's just love or money that you're struggling with, can be embraced. And you can look at it through the lens of courage and compassion. That's where you forge the path to a brighter future and a more financially free future. And hopefully you can have that happiness and harmony that you deserve. And I know that you probably had a lot of pain in the past, and you might be having pain and suffering right now in your second marriage. But I want you to know that it's very possible to make that second marriage work and to be just I can't even explain to you, because I'm in a second marriage that I'm very happy with, that it can be your forever person. It could be that, I don't even know how to explain it. You know where I'm getting. So I just want you to know that you can have all of that. And, I want you to join me next time on the next podcast, or check out some of my other podcasts so that you can go more towards your own journey, not only as a couple, but also personally. And as you work on yourself personally, even if your partner's not, there's a reaction that happens. So changes that you make will automatically create some changes in your partner. So don't worry if your partner isn't 100% on board. Just work on yourself, even if they're not. And you're going to enjoy more emotional healing and financial empowerment for doing so. So until then, take care, and remember, love conquers all, but finance helps.